And
so let me just introduce Christine, and thanks to all who are here. Christine Ilewski is an artist and an educator who founded Faces Not Forgotten after suffering personal losses to gun violence. Faces Not Forgotten was formed in 2010 to serve the dual mission of giving comfort to families who have lost a child 20 and under to gun violence, and to raise awareness of this devastating loss to our society. It is a 501c3 since 2017. Christine is the executive director, and she also was recently named as a survivor fellow with Everytown for Gun Safety. So Christine, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for being here tonight. I am going to try to share my screen with you so that can, let's see, I've got a PowerPoint. Let's see if I can.
This the green share screen.
There, have you got it? Are you seeing it?
Well, not yet, but.
Oh, no, you did not see it. Okay. I thought I just.
There might be an extra thing you have to do once you,
Okay, wait a minute then. Let me see what I have to do. Oh, I see share screen. I see the button and there we go. Share. How's that? Now?
Yes.
All right. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So Gail did a wonderful job of introducing the project and myself there. And this is our logo, which was done by a local St. Louis artist, a young man, because we started out as the Faces Project in 2009, 2010, because I'm gonna try to, here we go. So Father Larry, the two photos here, my dad is on the one on the side, and then Father Larry, who was a close family friend of ours. So as Gail said, I am a survivor, and I've had a double loss to gun violence. When I was only 20, my dad committed suicide. I got that unimaginable call that no one wants to get, that you have lost a loved one to gun violence. And then, oh, if you don't mind muting someone.
Right, please mute.
That's okay. That's okay.
I can do that too. I can do that too.
And I guess that wound was so deep, it was buried for a very long time. I was very young. My brother was only 14 and my sister 16. And much later in 2009, Lorenzo Rosebaugh, who was a St. Louis missionary oblate priest from the Godfrey area up here, was from St. Louis, but he had been a close family friend of ours, and he was killed in Guatemala. So when he was shot in Guatemala, it was so unthinkable to me, because he was a social justice advocate. He has worked with civil rights. He was working for freeing children from conscripted into the military in Guatemala. He was a very, very active man, and then that life was gone. And as an artist, my own work really ended. I just didn't know what to do, and I was grieving, and I know that it reactivated my own loss of losing my dad. So I'm putting up this image here for just a second, because we all know this image probably of Dorothea Lange from the Depression, and there are many images embedded in our social conscious images. The Obama poster, the young Afghani girl with the beautiful green eyes, the Mona Lisa. There are many, many images that we can collectively recall. And when we think of them, when you look at this mother, you can feel her pain. You can feel her sorrow, and her children are hungry and desperate. And I know as an artist that there is a power in the visual, in the art, that is different than the numbers. When Larry died, I started Googling children and gun violence. I wanted to do something. As an artist, I had no idea in my own little world the numbers of children that die every day to gun violence. So we are talking thousands of children, 8 children a day, age 20 and under, in this group that we paint. And that's a number you can't wrap your head around. That doesn't tell me Sam like Arnett. That doesn't tell me William. This boy is William. William was 16 years old and he had these beautiful blue eyes. And I found his photo on a website that his father had made as a memorial to him. He was 16 years old. He was working the second day of his first fast food job, and there was a robbery, and William was shot and killed. His dad had made this memorial to him. It was William is an only child. And I reached out on that website and asked Bill, his father, could I do a portrait of William? Would that give you any comfort? And Bill said yes. So that began the Faces Project in 2010. I went on to do this portrait of Tyrese. Look at that smile. Tyrese was only 7 years old. He was sleeping in the backseat of his father's car when there was a drive-by shooting, and he was killed in his sleep. You see the handkerchief in the background. This is what the Faces quilts look like, the quilt panels. The family receives an original portrait, which looks like the original there of Tyrese, his portrait, but this is an image print of that original put onto the background of a handkerchief, because to me, a handkerchief symbolizes a mother's grief, a mother's loss. This is Brandon. Brandon was only 3. He lived in Godfrey near us, where I live now. Another big smile. And he and his brother found a loaded gun and came to a tragic conclusion, and we lost Brandon. This is Ramel. Ramel was 11. Ramel lived very close to me. He went to the same grade school my children did. He loved math and basketball. He's from Alton. And he was just waiting to go to basketball practice, which is unfortunately often the case of circumstances of just children where they are. I heard horrible news today of a young boy again. It's just so often. So 2 teenagers started shooting, and this little boy was shot and killed. So in the beginning, the Faces, after I gave the original to the family, this is over 10 years ago, I would make the prints, and I drove around in a U-Haul to exhibit them. I wanted people to see and put a name and a face to these children. So my mission is to give comfort first with the portrait, and then to raise awareness of the loss, this really horrific loss that we are just taking for granted and ignoring. We took them to the Missouri State Capitol in Jeff City here, so that lawmakers might see them. This is even before Moms Demand Action existed, Gail. We took them to coffee houses so that the public could engage with them. And then in 2013, we won the Critical Choice Award. This was an art award for the project. And at that point, there were about 40 portraits I had completed. I had a friend step up and find other artists for me. And today there are over 300 portraits that are in 19 different states. The first transition we made was to this street banner. I took it to places like the Boys and Girls Club, where unfortunately many of the children would recognize the portraits of their friends. When Moms Demand Action got started, I brought it to churches and early events with the Moms Demand Action as a background to their programming. We took it on the streets to grieve with families. This was a march for Jared Elm, whose portrait's in the upper right-hand corner there. His family did a march down Grand Avenue in memory of him and to be outspoken about his death. He had been shot just stepping off a school bus. This was where he was shot and killed, and his family made a memorial there, and we took the banner there. When Moms Demand Action started doing Wear Orange events, I took the banner to the Art Museum and to other Wear Orange events. We held events at the Vaughan Cultural Center. And I guess I want to backtrack for a second. We never do a portrait without the family's permission. So it's been, in the beginning, we worked with the Crime Victims Advocacy Center of St. Louis, who would give our information to the families, and then they would send me a photo. In the beginning, they came by mail, they came by email. Today, we have submission links on our Facebook page and our website. And today we work really well with the Moms Demand Action and the Survivor Network, which I am a part of personally, and also now a fellow. I will speak to it. In 2016, we went to Chicago. And that was our first step out of St. Louis. It was overwhelming. We did over 40 portraits at once. The amount of loss in Chicago is just unbelievable. Those portraits were converted into the Chicago quilts. There are actually 10 Chicago quilts now with 8 children on them, 80 portraits of Chicago children, and always expanding. If you can see, holding up that quilt, my friend Delphine stands in the middle. She's becoming a fellow with me right now. She's been very active with Brady for a very long time. I did the portraits of her daughter and her son. She lost Thaisa and Tyler in 20 years apart in 2 separate incidents. And then a little girl, Anaya, there is standing next to her brother, Miguel. We like to go into the universities because we engage with the young people. This is an event at Northeastern where the art therapists were gathering. And from that convention, we actually met Miguel's sister and did Miguel's portrait. So we usually meet family members. It's kind of a continuous circle where we are talking about the project, expanding the project, reaching out to the families. I believe this was right before COVID, in 2019, Northeastern University honored our first Faces Not Forgotten quilt in Chicago with a permanent installation outside of their president's office. So there is a Delphine on the left. I'm looking at her on the left. And William's father, Bill, is standing next to me. Miguel's mom and sister are standing there next to Miguel, who is the portrait there closest to them in the middle. Delphine's children, Thaisa and Tyler, are at the top of that, and William's at the bottom. And is actually Delphine's nephew also on that quilt. So huge amounts of loss. It's hard for me to usually even get through these without crying. We bring in ministers. This is a close friend of mine who came in, and we always have a minister at our event. So we will ask at CRC, possibly, hopefully, for the rabbi to say a few words to give some comfort to our families who usually attend to see the portraits. So today there is Brandon, and this is his mother and his niece today. So they come out regularly to see his portrait, and this keeps alive our promise that we will not forget these children, that his portrait, Brandon has traveled around this country. He's been to DC and New Jersey and Indiana most recently. So his mom knows where those portraits are and that he is traveling. This was a 5K run that we did in honor of Nick Kapushnik, the St. Louis pharmacy student who was shot and killed while he was standing on a back porch. His family here does an annual 5K run in his honor. So this is Skyla with her portrait of her son, Aaron, and the artist, Christy Sawyer, who did that portrait. That's what it looks like when a family receives the portrait. And then Romel's mom is standing there pointing to the quilt panel of her son, Romel. So there are 2 parts to it. First, there is the portrait that goes to the family. and then to the mom. And then there is the quilt panel that we continuously exhibit. You can see when you look into the eyes of these children that they become embedded in our consciousness. These faces of these children go on to live in us, and we carry a piece of their soul with us. They are not a number. We're active with Moms Demand Action, as I said, and we've gone to the state capitol with the Moms Demand Action. I caught this little boy looking at these portraits at a Moms Demand Action rally down by the arch. It broke my heart because he may know people, and I pray that we do not have any family members of his on that quilt. We gave this quilt to Lucy McBath. This has the portrait of her son, Jordan, in the upper corner there. It has the portrait of the little girl, Jemiah, from Ferguson on it, Ramel, and other children. We hope that she has been able to use that as she has gone into Congress. So we've gone on with these quilts. The quilts are what we exhibit today. Our name changed from Faces to Faces Not Forgotten. This is Texas, where Peter with the mustache there is standing with family members the family members get to meet the artist at these events. He did most of the portraits on that quilt for Texas. We hope to go back there soon. We have a second quilt for Texas now. These are the New Jersey families and the survivor lead, Glenda Torres, and the other mothers there with their children. I particularly love how this exhibit at Rutgers, the lighting created a halo over the quilt. I think that's not a coincidence. We were at Cape Girardeau with Linda Stewart and the Moms Demand Action down there, where we did a Locket for Love event. We have a lot of people that can get involved then too. If you're not an artist, if you're not able to help us with this project, you can get involved definitely with Moms Demand Action. There's a lot to be done. This is the background I had behind me before. This is our Citrus, California exhibit. It was the largest exhibit to date that we had put up in 2020, and no one was ever able to actually attend because it was frozen in place for an entire year. Those quilts did go on and we did reopen. It was a very strange time. They were essentially entombed, and we had them there for about a year. Last year, we got back out again, and we were able to be at, we were in Syracuse, New York, we were in New England, and then we were here at the Indianapolis, University of Indiana. This was a beautiful space in the center of campus where many people interacted with it. We had some news broadcasts. We were able to have Pastor Jackie Jackson come out and speak to the families, and we did another Locket for Love. So the quilts look like this today. This is the postcard image for Georgia. The little boy in the middle in the hat was a suicide. I hope to be able to speak to that issue more as I learn more as a fellow. This is a St. Louis quilt. The three portraits on the bottom I did, and the young girl in the middle and the little baby is hers. That is a domestic violence incident that happened in the St. Louis region. The young man with all the yellow roses around him was a real happy-go-lucky guy. His family called him Noodles. His name was Ramel, but they called him Noodles. This is another St. Louis quilt. The QR code that you can see on those two center pieces, those are the brothers, Stephen and James Dent. Valerie Dent is on my board. Valerie lost both her sons one horrible morning. They were just coming home from work. There was a shootout that they got caught in the crossfire, and they were both killed. She lost both her sons that morning. Valerie tells her story with the QR code there. In our physical exhibits, we have 5 stories like that, and we've been trying to expand that. We're looking for volunteers to help us with that. We have, there is Jared up at the top, Brandy next to the boys, and little Demetrius up at the top too, Robbie. All of their stories are, you can read the mom's stories in a book that we put with an exhibit. Another St. Louis quilt. This has Chelsea Harris on it. She's a young girl who is being mentored by WashU's chancellor's wife, Risa. And Chelsea, her death was not, was honored by WashU taking on an investigation into violent crime in the St. Louis area. She had a bright future, and we honor her with a portrait with her cap and gown on. That's very common. Families want you to know that their child graduated, and often they are in college. Here's another St. Louis quilt. The young woman in the middle, Tanya, was caught in a drive-by, and she was pregnant at the time. Lost her and her baby. More of the St. Louis quilts. We have 9 St. Louis quilts now. And again, we are always accepting submissions. It doesn't matter how long it's been. So there is the St. Louis, one of our more recent quilts with Aaron Pryor. In the St. Louis region, we have East St. Louis and St. Louis children on the same quilt. There's Samuel. There is Samuel Arnett. Samuel is on this quilt with Aaron. My cursor, I don't know if you can see that, is
thank
on,
you again.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, beautiful boy and a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
All of these children. Yes, we are so sorry for your loss. The Chicago quilts, there's Thais and Tyler at the top. Each child, Sam, Thaisa, Tyler, you know, all of these children are a whole life, a whole story lost. Blair on this quilt was protecting a young girl on a bus when someone opened fire on a bus, and he protected and saved a young life. His parents were, his mother is a firefighter and his father was a police officer in Chicago. More Chicago children. And there's Siobhan in her cap and gown. Like I said, this is very significant for families that we know that their children were graduates. Daryl there with his cap and gown. It's not uncommon to have a child with a cap and gown as a portrait. Dominique, I love the portrait with the rose and the gorgeous smile on Malcolm. These are some today we have artists that are professional artists. They do their best to capture a likeness. Usually there aren't a lot of photos that the families have. We do our best to capture a likeness. We promise them that if it is not a good likeness, that we will do another. So it is a project of deep quality, even though it has become a lot of quantity. But again, we're not about numbers. We're about individual souls and individual lives. You can see that our project reflects the statistics that young men of color are so much more vulnerable to being lost to gun violence. This is not known nationally well enough. This is a story that needs to be told, that I believe Moms Demand Action attempts to tell, that we're trying to tell. There's Terrell up in the upper corner there. He was just putting his drums away after church. He played for the church every Sunday, and he was shot and killed on the parking lot of the church. Little Heaven in the middle. What a name. this little child was having a lemonade stand on her sidewalk so that she could go to Disney World. And she was 9 years old. There was a drive-by shooting. There's a lot of shooting that occurs and death that occurs by circumstance of where these children live, the environment that they are in, and their risk. They are at risk. More children from Chicago. My friend Delphine, when she tells her story, she moved out to the suburbs. She was a patrol officer, actually, and she wanted to give her children a good life. And the gun violence in Chicago is so intense, that she's lost 2 children. I don't have the answers, but this is the story. I tell the story, and we as artists, I think we feel a little helpless as artists because we're not always so good verbally. So what we can do is show the story. We can show you what this looks like. Here is New Jersey again. Jack in the middle was a suicide. My dad was called Jack. Here are the Tennessee children. We try to collaborate with other organizations now. All of these children were completed by one artist, Bill Perry, who works with RISBA. RISBA is an organization in Washington, D.C. Shaquitha Williams founded it because she has lost so many young nephews in this small town of Jackson, Tennessee. On this quilt, there are cousins related on this quilt. They are nephews of this lady. She's an amazing, strong lady. These are the babies of Miami. We have worked with an artist, Shire, who did all of these portraits. Shire has done over 500 portraits of people lost to gun violence in Miami alone. We collaborated to do this group of the youngest babies. And they are babies, just babies, 3, 4, Rakia there, 3 years old. This is Pennsylvania. We are working with a group called the Soul Shot Portrait, hopefully to bring this quilt out there and collaborate with them. They do portraits in Pennsylvania. This is Indiana, where we were just at IUPUI. We're working on a second Indianapolis quilt now, after having been there and families seeing the portraits and working with us. California, the second California quilt. You could just look at the humor in some of these young faces and the joy that's just taken from them. I think Georgia had a second time. This is New York City. We have some very young babies on that. Farrell is just 2. So now I ask you, if you see these eyes, will you remember these eyes? Will you remember Rakia's eyes? This is Rakia, 4 years old, from Miami. And will you remember Jerome's smile? Can you remember that smile? I hope that when you look at these quilts and when you visit the Faces Not Forgotten exhibits, that these young lives and their smiles are embedded in you so that you carry their memory. If you want to participate, you can find us on Facebook and our website. We are donation-based, and I would ask that we are desperately seeking sponsors and partnerships. We have a little bit of an awkward, we are a Missouri nonprofit, but I live in Illinois, which seems to be hampering us from some grants. If you donate $100, you will receive this book that I did about Father Larry, a children's book about his life and his work. He was actually in Selma, marched in Selma. Thank you very much. And I hope I didn't go over time there, Gail. I don't know.
No.
How was I?
No, you're good. And
okay, that maybe gives us a little time for any
yeah.
questions.
Yes, there's some questions and comments which we'll go through, and I agree this is really heartbreaking. I mean, it's it's hard to keep not to start crying at this heartbreak, but
Yeah, hard for me
it's a
too.
way to honor these. Yeah. I just had a comment that today is actually the birthday of Lucy McBeth's son, Jordan.
Oh,
It's
today is
today.
Jordan's
So,
birthday.
yes,
Wow.
he would have been
Okay.
27. I had a question about how many artists you use around the country.
I
You
think
know
we
how
have
many?
over 200 artists now.
Wow.
We have a number of artists like myself who have done many portraits. For some of them, it has become a personal mission. There are artists around the country. There's the man, Bill Perry, that works with RISPA. He's done hundreds himself. He does the sepia drawings. Peter Andrew in Texas has done at least 20. I've done about 40, but most of the time it is a one-time thing. We like to work with university art students under the direction of an instructor. Prior to COVID, we would go to a school, work with the students and the instructor to complete 8. So when we went to Citrus University, the instructor actually had 16 students that did portraits, and we completed 2 quilts with those 16 portraits in California right away. So that's a wonderful thing when we have that relationship. But with COVID and schools going virtual, I've been assigning them a little more one by one again, which is a little difficult. I have had some detached retinas, so I am not as visually accurate as I used to be. I guess that's a good way to put that.
Is there a way that people can sign up to be an artist or to help? You know, how do you
There is, you can email me directly here. You can also go to our website, and where there's a drop-down bar, you can submit to be an artist. You can submit a photo to have a portrait done. And we just ask that a family member submit, or someone that has permission to share that photo of that child. Because in the submission form, we always ask that they give us permission to then exhibit the print and the handkerchief collage portrait of the child with the quilts. And we don't want anyone to ever see their child exhibited somewhere when they did not give permission.
Absolutely.
I'd like to put in a little bit about not the face it's not forgotten element, because in Judaism we have this ritual where we always remember the person. Now we do it on their death day, which some people think of as morbid, but the reason why is that at least once a year you do a charitable action. You say this particular prayer that is all about being part of the universe and continuing life and things like that. So it's a very life affirming action, but it is deliberately to celebrate their life and not to commemorate their death.
I love that. That is perfect. That is what we are trying to do by, yes, telling their stories. I try to remember, there are so many now, I don't remember every date, but on Facebook, when we can, we acknowledge a date. But yes, we every time we have an exhibit, we have that book where the family, when they submit their photo, they're asked to tell us something about your child. Tell us who they were, what they liked to do, what did they love? And we try to get a little sense of who that child is. And when the families come to the exhibits, they can interact with the artist. It's very powerful to work on a portrait because you're working with a photograph. And I've always said that I usually talk to the child's spirit while I'm trying to do that portrait, and ask them to help me, render this likeness for their family. I'm a pretty spiritual person. I believe that they do. I believe that these children come through these portraits still and are not forgotten, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Do you know what the total number of portraits is at this point, or is it so high?
We have over 300 portraits. We have about 30 2 quilts completed. We have quite a few more that are in process. So we are in states where we haven't completed a quilt yet. Washington, Alaska, actually, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland. There are quite a few states where we have started, but we don't have 8 portraits completed. It's kind of a catch-22. Once we visit a state, then we usually have more than 1 quilt. So we're working on the second Indiana one now. We have 3 for Tennessee, 3 for Texas. You know, it grows. We don't stop ever. But I've been trying to do at least one, excuse me, 1 quilt of 8 children for each state, because the 8 children represents just 1 day. That is 1 day. So when we hang them, you know, when we're there at CRC in April, I don't know how many we'll have now. If we'll have 13 to 15 is kind of an average amount, but that just represents, you know, 1 day. If we have 14, that's just 2 weeks. That's how, yeah, that's how horrible this is. The BBC did a piece about the project, I think in 2016 or 17, and they just couldn't believe this happens. And I can't believe this happens either. Why do we allow this? How can we allow this? You know, how can we allow our
There's
children to be
there's
killed?
no political will to stop it. I mean, it's incredible to me that there will be hundreds of people saying, you know, these laws are too weak. We need to fix them. You know, this is not rocket science. And yet the politicians will say, nope, nope, our guns are more important than our children. And that's literally what they're saying.
Either that or the money from the NRA actually is more important than, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, at least we're making some headway there, I guess. But,
right,
you know,
that's
I mean,
right.
I think, I think there are organizations like I have seen. So I have been doing this since 2010, and Moms Demand Action is not that old, which is shocking. They came about after Sandy Hook. And for that, we have done 1 child with Sandy Hook, but we have not exhibited that child yet. We would love to. I feel that we should respectfully exhibit the children that have died in school shootings together. So we have 1 child from Illinois, Rayana, who was killed on Valentine's Day up in Northern Illinois. But we have not exhibited her. She is the only one from that school. I just feel we need to do something a little different to recognize that situation. Maybe not, but maybe, I don't know. It just when they all have been taken at one time, it seems appropriate, like we have the dead brothers together. And you know, it's just different. It's telling the story and trying to get that to some kind of critical mass. You know, I'm old enough to remember the AIDS quilts and how that shifted our culture when those AIDS quilts were laid out on the mall. And that's a lot of my inspiration with this project. I don't really, in the beginning, I thought, oh, we'll take them and we'll lay them on the mall. Well, we're not about quantity to that extent. And that was a different type of project. There have been other groups, Soul Boxes just did that, showing the numbers on the mall. And there's another one, the National Gun Violence Memorial, that I hope we can collaborate with, who is doing a good job of showing numbers. But I think when we all come together, if we could all exhibit together, that would be amazing, because you could get the sense of the individual as well as the number then. Our project is about the individual. It's about each soul, each face, each child. And yeah, I think it takes all the different artists with their different visions coming together But again, working together, we might shout a little louder, we might be heard. We hopefully will make some kind of impact. And, Black Lives Matter, nobody knew what that meant. And now nationally you do. There are things like that. So I would hope that we could at least, I wish we didn't have to do this anymore, but I would hope we could get to some place of national understanding of this issue of children dying from gun violence. I mean, there are thousands of people that die from gun violence of all ages, and there are mostly adults that die from suicide, which is all horrific. But we have children in this country that we aren't protecting. We have children that are dying every day.
And it's, I think the most startling thing, the most crushing thing to me was when you said each quilt represents a week, that
A
that
day,
there's
a
basically
single
day,
day,
I mean, rather a day. I didn't
a
mean a
day.
week. I mean,
No.
a day.
Uh,
That was just heartbreaking to me. That was literally just that. I mean, I knew it intellectually. I know the numbers. I repeat the numbers all the time to politicians. When I call them up and on the phone and I say, this is why you shouldn't do this. But, in Missouri, it's all about don't pass this bill. And this is why. And, but seeing
Well, and our quilts, you can go to our website and print out the quilt image if you are using it respectfully in a lobbying way. We have made these images available. The families want legislators to see their child. They want them to know. So that was why we sent the quilt to Lucy. We have been given permission to use them respectfully, that look into this child's eyes. I went once with Brady and I was terrible at it. I'm a terrible lobbyer. I can paint and I can tell this visual story, and I rely on people like you who can be more verbal, who know how to interact verbally. But I think it's a combination of making an argument and showing this story. There's two ways of reaching people. They really are. And people are kind of just, they're hardened to the numbers. Maybe they feel helpless. Maybe they don't know what to do with it. Maybe the numbers just, I've seen lots of exhibits that just show numbers, and it doesn't really get a response of empathy. And it is empathy that we need in this country to change things. If we all could feel an empathy for this situation and actually understand what's going on. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what that looks like or feels like until it's them,
Right.
or someone in their family. So they do lack empathy.
Yeah.
And I typed this in the chat, Christine, but I wanted to tell you again, thank you so much for your work and your effort, everything that you are doing. And on behalf of everyone who has ever received a portrait and the children's pictures and the quilts, it is very comforting to know that it's not just the family who acknowledges loss and friends, that you all are working to make sure that these babies' memories are not forgotten. I don't know if I had a chance to tell you this, but when I went to see Sam's portrait, I didn't even realize it, but my other son, Caleb, he has a teammate, RJ, and RJ's portrait was there as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think they might be on the same quilt, Arnett. Are they on the same quilt?
No, they're on two different.
Two different ones. Okay. Because those are the two most recent quilts. We're working on a new one right now, but yeah, I didn't know that. RJ. Yeah. RJ, I think RJ was actually painted by a friend, because a lot of children knew RJ also. Right. Yeah.
Christine, if we have ideas of other places that might exhibit the quilts, yeah, out in other states? How's the worship? Should we just get those to you? Yeah, I
Yes,
have
please.
contacts
We
out of state that has the worship who might, yeah.
Right.
please do. I thank you, Arnetta. Thank you so much. And you're very brave and strong to come to the openings and to join us tonight. I just want to acknowledge that. Like I'm going through this training right now as a survivor, trying to learn how to tell my own story of my loss of my dad, and I'm having a hard time. So I have deep respect for the families and the moms that get up every day and keep going and are working to try to raise awareness and trying to protect other families so they don't have to go through what they have gone through. I lost a nephew to leukemia, and that's the closest I can come to understanding losing a child. Losing a parent was horrible, and I've carried it my whole life, but it's a different kind of loss. And I cannot understand completely the loss that all of these families have gone through. It actually took me a very long time to even call myself a survivor. I felt very separate from the moms because this is an unspeakable loss. This is just not supposed to be happening. This is some kind of horrible American, like, do we want to go down in history as this? This is what we are. I hope not. I think we need to find some ways to impact people that they can understand. How can they understand what this is? And I think, telling each child's story. I'm trying to get something more going with StoryCorps. I'm not doing a very good job of it. If anyone wants to help us with that, that would be lovely. We worked with Carla Duncan and a reporter from the St. Louis American to record the 5 stories that we have on QR codes. And Carla will make more QR codes for us to hear the families talk about their child, if we can find the people to do the recording, or we can set that up again with StoryCorps. I just have a little bit on my plate, so I am not going to be the one that's going to be able to figure that out. But we are looking for a volunteer to help us continue recording family stories also. Maybe it would be just reading their story. I'm open to all kinds of ideas, but I would like to have a verbal part to this so that you can hear families talk about their children. And some of our quilts, I know one of the other moms that came, Tanya's mom was there. And, some of our families our moms and dads are getting a little older, and we've lost some of the parents. And I can see the toll that it's taken on these families. They've had illnesses and it's a horrible burden to carry. It's just a horrible burden to carry.
Christine,
Yes.
I have two questions. Number one, would you like for us to put out both at the synagogue and at, Moms Demand Action, the ask for someone to help with the recording?
Would be great. That would be
the
great.
question, answer recording sort of situation?
Yes, we are looking for someone who has those kinds of skills, video recording or sound, and would like to do that. That would be wonderful. We probably are looking for some students maybe that want to take it on as a project, or I've been looking for some student interns. I'm looking also for a student intern probably, because it's a big job, to help us really get our database of artists up to date, because we want to share the artists' websites that have done portraits for us. But with 200 or so artists, that's a big project. They're on a Google. It's finishing out a Google spreadsheet, so it's a tedious kind of database job that I need some help with. So we're looking for interns. So we could use some interns. It's really just me. I have a board and they are wonderful, but they're and well, we've added some new board members that are doing some good things. We've got a new board member trying to do some marketing and update our website and a lot of things we haven't been able to do. And we have a young woman who's doing some social media for us, Janessa. So that's real exciting too. I have one angel donor that really keeps us afloat, and I'm always looking for a little bit of sponsorship to just kind of help us keep going too. Each quilt costs about $600 to produce, and we give a small stipend of $30 to each artist, but we'd really like to be able to give them just a little bit more since COVID, they have to, complete the piece and ship it themselves. And they're, it's a donation. It's a donation of love, but yeah.
And feel free when the exhibit comes to CRC and when you speak again to talk about your needs, volunteers, donors,
I'm getting better at that. I'm trying to get better at that because it's getting a little tight here.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful.
Do we have any other questions?
Oh, yeah. My other question was, are you, since this is basically based in St. Louis, Illinois, that sort of, are you looking for other places in Missouri, both to find stories and to display? Because you mentioned Linda Stewart and showing at Cape. Moms has, what is it, Gail? How many is it? It's 50 now? Chapters all over the state?
No, it's with COVID, it's a little bit fuzzy right now because a lot of our local groups aren't really meeting. So we may have to wait until that's clarified a bit. But I love the idea of going to the state capitol again. If you could do that,
I think that's very powerful.
I don't want to get political, but it's so horrible that our legislators at least should see who these children are. They should see, I don't know if it'll change their votes, but they should at least see. Right.
I think that makes a powerful exhibit, and we could talk about that even maybe the Wear Orange time or next year during the National Gun Violence Survivor Week or something like that would be a good time to do that. I'd like to get us to Kansas City probably so that we could expand into Kansas also, because we have not done a portrait of a child in Kansas. I think that there is room to speak about teen suicide by gun in Missouri that we are not addressing. I will need some help in how to do that, but I can speak to it as a survivor from that end of the impact that suicide has on a family. So I think that is a little bit of what happened when we went to Cape, that they may have not, they were certainly very moved by the project, but we didn't really receive any submissions after we were in Cape, because I think the issues are probably a little different. But that's true. I would like to just keep expanding to other states. We like to do the university exhibits because we do usually try to get a stipend from the school and programming. We can keep it up for like a month, which gives us a lot of time to do an event with Moms Demand Action, to do an event with the families. I really don't do too many street events anymore. Skyla is on my board, and in East St. Louis, she's very active with the banner quilt. That's the only street banner we ever made, and she has it over there, and she's very active with Moms Demand Action over there, and puts on, they do toy drives at Christmas. They do a lot of things. I have been kind of dreaming up of an idea of doing a permanent installation, possibly in a respectful church or synagogue setting, where we would leave a quilt like we did that one in Northeastern, and a more permanent exhibit. And I have some ideas about that, but again, what my ideas, if we were really going to make it a more permanent art piece, I think that we would definitely have to get some funding for that. So, but I think that that would be nice so that families could visit their children in a more memorial way. And also just to kind of keep those faces in the face of lawmakers, as we were saying, I mean, we have national memorials for veterans and we have many national memorials, but we don't have a really significant national memorial to some of the greatest losses we have had.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Oh my. Well,
I
it's
just
you
had-
really. Oh yeah, go ahead, Phil.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. I've had overlapping Zoom meetings, so I was on the phone earlier and now here.
Thanks for
Just
joining.
some random, huh?
Thanks for
Sorry.
joining us. That's okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I heard everything you said. I just didn't get to see all the slides. I mean, it just some random thoughts. The fact I was part of the AIDS project, the AIDS quilt and made quilts was there when it started. And the power of that is amazing. At the same time, what the media has been covering is the annual September 11th flag posting that goes on Art Hill. And that becomes a big deal. Because it was an enemy that attacked us, and therefore these were purely innocent victims, and they could put an American flag next to each name. Yeah, it just bothers. And then we have COVID with 900,000 Americans dead, and we can't get a breakthrough to figure out how people can understand what they could do so simply to stop it from spreading. So much less effort than to stop gun violence. Yet the public doesn't seem to care enough to stop the deaths. So, I mean, those are just some contradictory thoughts that hit me. I would love to see it in the state capitol, but, last year there was an LGBT history display from Kansas City that got put up in the state capitol, and then some legislators complained that they complained it wasn't a topic that should be in the capitol. They opposed it, and the governor ordered it taken down. And so you just prep this one, so that you have maybe some bipartisan support when the ask is made. Because
I agree, and
Right, yeah.
I feel like after doing this for 10 plus years now, I think that my hope lies in something more along the lines of what happened with the AIDS quilts, where it wasn't through the legislators that we got change. It was through a universal final understanding when there was that volume and that sense, that empathy that came across when you saw those quilts on the mall. I don't know that we'll see ours on the mall, but if they were seen, I'd like to see them on billboards. I wish I had the money to put them on billboards. I want I want people to see these young faces over and over and over again, because I do believe in the power of art to impact people in that way. Like I said, you were maybe didn't hear the very beginning, but there are images we hold in our national consciousness. We hold the Dorothea Lange migrant mother image. We hold a lot of really powerful imagery in our collective consciousness that if you just say it to a group of people, they all know what you're talking about. And if these children, if we got large enough, if we were exhibited enough, I don't know, Oprah, I don't know what it'll take. I think it takes, I say that a little jokingly, but I would love to have Oprah have the quilts on her show. I would love to have visual imagery projected nationally, so that you just can't, because you really can't say anything to the face of a child that's dead. You can't be too harsh about it. Oh, you may get, I know the comments that you'll get. Oh, they were in trouble or they were doing something. No, these children weren't. These children, I mean, of the 300 plus portraits we've done, there's a small handful there that may have been involved in buying or selling a little pot or something, but they they were just victims of circumstance of where they live, often not the target, often, or there's some horrific things happening where they're actually being targeted because they are lifting themselves up and going to college and getting out, right? Like that's a Chicago story I won't even get into here, but
Well,
yeah,
I do have 3 suggestions for displays.
sure.
One is whatever Congress people are in a district that are supportive where any of these portraits come from. So I'm thinking Congressman Cleaver and Congressman Cory Bush and any other districts.
Right.
Reach out to them as a group to see if they would host a display at the Capitol, along with the national organizations, and have just a reception there.
That's a great.
Lovely
That would be
idea.
something that could be
Good idea.
done. The other 2 groups, one, I would contact the Interfaith Partnership of St. Louis and see if they can host an event, region-wide interfaith, and have a single display and maybe a presentation, certainly meet the artist, and the same things can be done at CRC, but do it through the IP in a larger way.
Oh, okay,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would love to. We've been to DC a few times. We actually laid them on the lawn in front of the Capitol, but I hope at some point we can have we have over 30, they're about 33 quilts now. They're 4 feet wide. 4 feet times 33 is a pretty significant imagery. At some point, it would be very interesting. I would love to go back and maybe we stretch them along the wall, the Vietnam Wall or something.
Oh, the memorial,
The
yeah.
image I'm thinking, that could be done. But if you were to get these various members to have a hearing, and then you have these banners, the quilts held in the back of the room,
That would be
Wow.
wonderful.
I-
family are
Wow.
giving testimony.
That
That
is
would be
great
what I would
I
idea.
tried the Illinois
love that.
Congress people as well in the
Yeah,
Chicago area.
whatever district, any
Yeah.
district where you have sport.
Yeah.
And then the third place that I was going to suggest, you mentioned it, that you'd like to, is the companies that have electronic billboards
Mm.
will sometimes donate because they're
Oh,
rotating
okay.
them.
Oh,
So I would, as you're driving down the highway, find out which one. CBS is one company,
really? Okay.
but there may be some others, and I would contact them and see if, as a public service, they would do that. I would first see if the Interfaith Partnership is willing to do an event, and then there could be an overlay to the pictures. Then you could be asking the billboard companies to present the event that Interfaith Partnership is doing,
Oh, I like
which
that.
would have those details superimposed on a picture of the quilt.
Mm.
More likely that the billboard company would go for it then. But if you can't get something with IP, just reach out to them and see if you couldn't pitch them.
Thank you very much. Those are great ideas. I think we are at that turning point where we have such a volume of portraits now, and we will not stop, but we could make an impact with what we have already right now. We won't stop doing them, and that is a very significant, that's our mission. But I think I'm hoping that we're getting to a place where the impact could be larger from the numbers we have done.
I'd like to suggest that, since you said you sometimes like pairing with universities and things like that, that we look at if you, especially since you were talking about suicides, if you do something like quilts from Springfield or Kirksville and Columbia, which highlight both the domestic violence and the suicide, because there'll be young people. But the other thing that will be significant is that you'll probably get, and I hate to say this, a whole lot more white faces, because that's going to move Jeff City more than little African-American kids, because most of these unfortunately, most of these legislators there don't live in a world where they have to think about an African-American person. And they refuse to acknowledge that they're bigoted and that they don't include these people in their thoughts. And
Well, and there, so it's back to what I hear what you're saying, and I think it would be wonderful if someone who has contact with families that have suffered suicide in those regions was able to reach out to them. Again, we never reach out directly to families ourselves, and we wouldn't do any of those portraits until those families came to us. And that's been the catch-22 with that issue. We were in Cape. We did talk about suicide. We talked about some of the children we have on other quilts who committed suicide.
the unintentional shootings.
Right. Or and those kinds of accidents or the domestic violence. But we didn't receive any new ones. And I think there is, and therein is a lot of shame associated with the loss. So that's something I can honestly speak to with my own situation. I didn't speak of my father's suicide for many years because families who lose a child to suicide are suffering from a great deal of shame. So I think that it isn't valid. They shouldn't, but that's what happens. They blame themselves.
Right.
I think that if there is a group that is working with families that if there's a support group for families who've lost a child to suicide and they earned the trust enough that those families would want us to do the portraits, I would love to do a whole quilt of 8 children that were all victims of suicide by gun, but that would be very powerful, but we don't have that. I mean, I would have that if I took them from different states, but I don't have that. And maybe we should do that. I might have to talk to those families and say, could we take your child and put them on a quilt that is specifically about suicide? And I hadn't thought about that till right now, actually. But when again, I love these ideas, and I think if anyone has that mission to reach those families, that's what it takes for us to be able to do the quilt. I won't be able to do that quilt until those families send in a photo. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to do this. I think we need to wrap it up. We're at 8:15.
Yes, I guess it is. It's
That's okay.
late.
This has been recorded, so it will be available for others to see. We're excited that you'll be at CRC in April, and I think opening that Friday night, you'll be speaking on April 8th. So we'll
get
the word out, and that'll be another opportunity to spread the message and show the quilts and perhaps get some of the volunteers and other support that you need. So.
And I don't know if you remember, Gail, I was at CRC. We were there a while ago.
Yes, I do remember. I think it was before I was involved with moms, perhaps.
Yeah, it was before moms even, maybe, or early on. And
it was very early on.
It was early on. Lois Schaefer. I was there with Lois.
Yes, who I talked about. I think she's from my hometown. Yeah.
Lois has written a book now, and I'm included in her book. I think it's coming out. I don't know, but she and I are in touch with each other. So it'll be really wonderful for me to come back to the congregation and speak again. And I have a fondness for you guys. You do some really good work, and thank you for inviting me tonight. Thank you for letting me tell my story. And I might even have to let them know I did this tonight. Gail, you'll have to advise me on that, I guess. But I didn't count this as a speaking engagement yet because I'm still in training. But I think Moms Demand Action enough that we should give them.
Yes, I think
let's
so.
give them the link.
We'll
give them the link. I think they can do that. That would be good.
And
if you have any more questions for me, please email me.
I'm sending you an I'm sending you an email.
You have our email, so that's good. Perfect. Okay. And we will, let's do our best when we're in person in April. Whoever's on the call, let's get a good turnout for that opening event with Christine and for the exhibit.
Will she be presenting, Gail, at the service that night?
Yes, on April 8th.
She'll be the guest speaking, giving the.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Gail, we should talk. We might need a
Uh-huh.
separate
Yeah.
event
I
for
don't
the
know whether you have to-
families to come. We'll talk.
Oh, well,
But,
I guess we'll work on that.
Yeah, let's
We'll
work on that because
that.
they may not
Okay.
be comfortable coming to the
Right.
service. But
Okay, no, yeah,
um,
that's fine. I'm sure
That
there'll
might be a
enough-
Sunday,
It'll
that
be
might be
there
a
about
Sunday activity like
It'll be
triple
there
pie.
for a month.
Yeah.
So we'll have time.
Yeah.
We'll work on
Right.
that.
Right.
that's what
Okay,
I
very good.
appreciate. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
We're
I
running
don't
out of-
know if you have
Bye-bye.
to stop.
Lots
Okay,
of time.
thank
Thank
you.
you
Okay.
so
Bye,
much,
bye-bye.
Christine.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all for
Thank you for
coming.
being here.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for all
Bye.
you do.